All right, welcome to part two. Thanks for coming back. I assume since you guys returned that I didn't talk with you guys last time when we talked about the general problems of generative AI and the misappropriation of intellectual property. This time we're going to talk about how to protect yourself, how to kind of mitigate those problems. So again, welcome back. The same caveats from last time apply. I am not I am not a lawyer or a computer scientist. I am also not a website developer. Okay, so I learned a lot while I was researching and preparing this presentation, but I am not an expert on website development, so keep that in mind. The huge caveats that we're going to be dealing with today are that we are dealing with solutions for now. We are engaged in an arms race against unscrupulous actors who we know will not respect our rights. It's a little like trying to catch athletes who are using performance-enhancing drugs. They're always going to find ways around our preventative strategy. And nothing is 100% protective against misappropriation. Even before the advent of generative AI, posting on the internet could be a double-edged sword, right? Like it does grow your audience. You want to share your art with the world, but it does always make your work more susceptible, more vulnerable to misappropriation or infringement. But you need to display your work on the internet. It is the town square of modern society, and it is your right to do so. As we learned last time, it is a human right to display your art. But as we also learned last time, there are companies who will not respect those human rights, according to the UN. But there are steps that we can take to keep your work safer out there on the wilds of the internet. So here's our agenda for the day, part of our agenda for the day. We have some low-tech options, some medium-tech options, and some high-tech options. Not all of these will be applicable to everybody, but I wanted to cover as many of these strategies as I could. All right, first, low-tech things. These are things that we all can do, and as such, they offer the least protection against AI scraping, but they're still worth looking at and worth thinking about doing. So, did anybody go to the Have I Been Trained website that we looked at last time to see if your work is included in that Lion 5B dataset? Not yet. Not yet. Okay. Take a look. This site, which is run by a company named Spawning AI, and as part of Spawning AI's mission to achieve a more ethical generative AI, they have started to set up a do not train registry. And you can use this site to add your work, any work that you find in that data set, to the do not train registry. You're going to create a login for the site. And then if you find any of your work, you're going to select it and add it to the do not train registry. They will ask you to confirm that you are, in fact, the copyright holder of the works that you're asking to be added to that registry. And then you'll see in your dashboard any of the works that you selected to add to that registry. It does specifically note that this is only effective with organizations that honor these requests. And it only applies to the training of future models. If you've already found your work in the Lion 5B dataset, it's too late to opt it out of current models. You can also request to be opted out of other models. This has to be done for each individual AI company and each individual work. And they don't make it very easy. It's almost like they made it hard on purpose. Not all companies offer opt-outs. Facebook and Instagram, which are both owned by Meta, offer no opt-outs at all, except in the UK and the EU, because frankly, they have much more robust protections for citizens and consumers than we do. We can't have nice things. But here are the opt-out procedures for OpenAI and Stability AI. You have to fill out this form for OpenAI for every single image you want opted out of their data set. And it takes 2 emails to Stability AI to get a work out of their data set. And like the do not train registry, it's also only applicable to future model training. I put this in quotation marks because honestly, this feels like a PR stunt. And it completely glosses over the fact that these systems ought to have been opt-in the first place. All right, only applies to future. All right, this in and of itself will not protect your work from scraping, but adding copyright information to your images is a great idea anyway. Should regulations ever be put into place regarding the indiscriminate scraping of intellectual property on the internet, and I realize that the chances of that happening in the next 4 years kind of went out the window a few months ago, but we can hope. But this will ensure that your work has the proper metadata associated with it to protect, to mark it as copyright protected. So in Adobe, and I'm hoping that most of you use Adobe products, that's what I have access to, and it's what I use as examples in this presentation. If you guys use other image editing softwares, I'm happy to help you figure out how to do similar things in those programs. All right, you want to get into your file info screen, where you, in your basic menu, you can add your title, your author, and your copyright status, which you want to make sure to be changed to copyrighted. You can also add a statement, a copyright notice, perhaps specifically stating that this work should not be used for training generative AI. Here is a sample statement that I adopted from the Authors Guild suggested statement.
Laura, can you do that even if you haven't filed copyright for the copy?
Yes,
Office?
even if it's unregistered. Yes.
Thank you.
Then you're going to jump over to your IPTC menu, which stands for International Press Telecommunications Council, as we all know. You can add contact information that can make it easier for people who are viewing your work to get in touch with you. Hopefully paying for your work, maybe commissioning you something else, right? So that's the goal. Okay, so low resolution images are kind of useless for training generative AI systems. So only posting at a low resolution is a pretty good idea. Again, in Adobe, you want to get into your image size menu. And the consensus seems to be that 72 pixels per inch is the right range to be pretty decent for online display, but pretty useless for ingesting into AI training model or model training. If you're worried that your audience online might be turned off or disappointed by lower quality graphics of your work, I suggest posting a disclaimer along with your work saying, I'm posting at a low resolution, in order to combat generative AI training. This can help educate people that these are ethical issues that they ought to be aware of. Then you're going to want to do a save for web, where you can specify again if you want it at a low resolution, and make sure that you attach that copyright and contact information that you just created. Save for web also reduces file sizes, which is helpful if you have your own website for hosting purposes. You can see here the difference. It reduces it by about 2/3 in the file size. All right, we can add watermarks to our work. Watermarks tend to muck up the usefulness of an image because AI companies have now become aware of their system's propensity to recreate those watermarks. And so they've been doing their best to keep watermarked images out of their data set. Now, there are a lot of ways to do this. Some are pretty complicated. Some are pretty simple. I found one that was so simple, even I could do it. And I took like one Photoshop class a million years ago, and even I could figure this one out. We're not going to watch this video. It's only about 6 minutes long, but we're not going to watch it right now. You will find the link not only here, but it will be linked behind the QR code at the end of the presentation. Okay, so unfortunately, most platforms' terms of service allow data scraping for AI training. You know those terms of service that you never ever read because nobody ever reads them. This has been true for quite a while, actually. The terms of service of social media sites and web hosting companies allow those companies to do pretty much whatever they want with your stuff, including selling it to AI companies. This is the latest terms of service from the company Snapchat, but I took the company name out because it's pretty boilerplate. They all say this. And if some of these words are jumping out at you as familiar from last time, it's because these are your moral and material rights to your work that are human rights under the UN's guidelines. And their terms of service force you to rescind those rights in perpetuity just by posting on their sites. So remember, If you are using a platform or an application for free, it's because you are the product. We live in the age of surveillance capitalism, and this is how they make their money. Whether it's selling your content for AI training or selling your location, your behavioral data to third-party data brokers, this is how they make their money, and you are their brothers. Okay, so not safe sites, basically everybody and all the major players. They will sell your data. They are selling your data to AI training right now. But luckily, there are some other options. And I call these AI safe, but that can mean a couple of different things. Some of them have committed to not selling your data for AI training. Some of them ban AI imagery altogether. And some of them apply protections to your work as you post on them. We've got Blue Sky, which you've probably heard of recently as an alternative to Twitter. But the big one up here is Kara, which was developed by the photographer and artist Jana Zhang. And it includes Glaze, which is a protection strategy we'll talk about later. And they also have a ban on AI images now, although it leaves the window open for labeled inclusion once, and I quote, the rampant ethical and data privacy issues around data sets are resolved by a regulator. GenAI allows you to sell your art as well from the site, and they also apply something they call a confusing overlay onto your work as you post there. Artful is a social media site. It does challenges, kind of like DeviantArt does, which of course is not a safe site. The last two I don't know too much about, but if you're looking for a new portfolio site, they're worth exploring. All right, yes.
Why would someone write over safety? Not safe.
Because these people are actively selling your data to AI companies. These people are not actively selling your data to AI companies, although it's important to apply other protective strategies to things that you do post on these sites, because that data can still be scraped by bots, which we'll talk about later.
So there's still vulnerabilities.
Yes, yes, they're not, I call it safe.
And I do not know Elon had movie.
You noticed that, huh?
Perfect.
And did you have a question?
Yes, how could we find out what kind of audience the ones on the right have?
That is a good question. And honestly, these are all new sites, right? They're new sites, and they have to make money too. They have to bring money in, it costs money to run them. I'm not an economist, but I would guess that some of these sites won't make it long term. I think the biggest one and the most active one is Kara. And I think you can find a variety of audiences for different kinds of art, different media on there. But that's something that's still being decided, actually, because these sites are so new that it hasn't really become, there is no one site like Twitter used to be, or even Facebook used to be, where everybody and their mom was on there, you know? So that's what's still being worked out, where the best place for your art might be. Good questions.
I think the librarians need to unite, and make us a site.
Maybe this is time.
Make us a site.
Oh, yeah, I don't have the website development experience to do that.
All the librarians.
All right, I have called these next ones medium tech, mostly because I like parallel construction. These are solutions if you have your own website. Does anybody here have their own website for hosting their work? Great, fantastic. Even if you don't have one now, it's possible you might want to make one later. These are the strategies that we have available for your own website. If you do have a site and you have used WordPress to build it, they are already selling your data to AI training companies. This is going to depend on whether you use WordPress.org or WordPress.com. I was really confused about this. This is my ignorance of website development coming to the fore, and we're going to get into the weeds a little bit here, so just bear with me. WordPress.org is an open source content management system that you can use to build a website that is hosted on any company's hosting services. WordPress.com is WordPress.org's hosting company. So it's a little like having a mobile home. Your home is the website. You built it using WordPress.org. but it may or may not be parked on worldpress.com land. Maybe it's parked on GoDaddy.com land or DreamHost land. If it is parked on WorldPress.com land, they are already selling there. They have offered an opt-out. Of course, we know it should be an opt-in, but here are the opt-out procedures for WorldPress.com. So if you're looking for a new hosting company, I would recommend that you actually read those stupid terms of service to make sure you're not setting yourself up with a company that's just going to sell your content right out.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to ask some questions. Years ago, it was advised that my URL and my hosting company were different companies
Okay.
to be less locked in.
Oh, okay. Oh. So you're kind of hedging your bets a little bit.
Having more control because they control everything.
Oh, that's what I meant. Okay, so when it comes to our media tech strategy, first thing I need to do is clarify something from last week. And that is what exactly these huge training data sets are. The Lion 5B data set is not a huge chunk of files that they give to you on a flash drive or 1,000 flash drives. It would take quite a few flash drives to hold 6 billion images. It is a list of links. And every company that uses those data sets has to send out web crawlers, bots, to visit those links and scrape that content off of each of those sites. The web is full of crawlers. Sometimes they're called spiders because they explore the World Wide Web. They're so clever. And they perform a variety of tasks. Some of them index sites, which makes them findable on search engines, which is usually a positive for most people. But some of them are the bots that are crawling and downloading content for AI. What we want is a way to tell these crawlers where and how they should be accessing and indexing and scraping content from our site. And the way to do that is with a robots.txt site. Every single website has a robots.txt website. It is a text file that lives behind the scenes of your website. And it instructs automated bots on how to crawl your site or not crawl your site, and what areas of your site it ought to be crawling or not crawling. Since the rise of the modern internet, website developers and coders have used this file to indicate which crawlers they want on their sites and which crawlers they don't. Here is the SFCC robots.txt site. It allows all bots, but you'll see these are the areas where they don't want bots crawling. And you'll see some of this is the WordPress management pages. PMP is the master's program. Here is YouTube's TXT site. And because these are sites that regular users never ever see, they often have these nerdy little jokes in them. Like this one says, it's created in the distant future after the robot uprising of the mid-90s white world. You'll see these little tech jokes on. So YouTube is owned by Google. So this first stanza here is indicating that any and all crawlers from Google can access all sites of YouTube. But the rest of them, the rest of these areas are areas where crawlers should not be on. Here is part of the New York Times' robots.txt site. The heading here explicitly states that data scraping for AI development is prohibited, but the rest of the robots.txt site for the New York Times would not fit on this wall at a reasonable, readable font size. And this is pretty common since the advent of generative AI. As you might remember from last time, the New York Times is suing OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT and DALL-E, for infringing on their journalistic content. And they and many other website owners have dramatically enlarged their robots.txt files to specifically disallow AI crawling. And here's part of their site where you can see several AI bots being disallowed. And that's why that's what they're doing now. Okay, but here's one of the problems. So unless you want to disallow all crawlers, and then you would essentially be unfindable on the internet, you have to disallow each individual company's crawlers individually. which means you have to know about each individual company's products. Now, the New York Times has a whole team of web developers who are staying on top of this, but it's a lot harder when it's just you and me. You can do it, even if you don't have a lot of website development or coding experience. As you can see, the stanzas are standardized and it's pretty simple structures. And I found this great website, which walked me through not only how to use the TXT site, but how to manage and maintain it. But there is another problem. This piddly little text file doesn't actually prevent bots from accessing disallowed sites. It does not carry the force of law. It is a handshake agreement, and it has been since the very beginnings of the internet. It was assumed that the companies behind these crawlers would be honorable, ethical, would comply with website owners' requests. But I think we all know we're pretty far from the halcyon days of the decentralized 90s style web, and there are bad actors out there. So to be clear, most of the major actors in AI have stated that they will continue to comply with this. And then there's this company, Perplexity.ai. They specialize in something called retrieval augmented generation, which means that their AI is supposedly more accurate because it's scraping data off of the web in real time to provide its answers. Now they're being sued by the Wall Street Journal and the New York Post for real-time infringement. And it has been revealed through investigative reporting, thank God for investigative reporting, that they are not respecting robots.txt protocols. I mention them specifically because they are branding themselves as an AI for researchers, as an AI for scholars, and as such, you may hear them recommended by faculty or librarians, but I do not recommend them. All right, another option is to post your work behind paywalls. I know this is not an ideal solution for most of us. Art is meant to be seen, it is meant to be shared, but this is an option. Perhaps you already have a robust following for your work. There are a couple of different ways to do this, the most popular of which is Patreon. You've probably heard of Patreon, perhaps you've heard a blogger or a YouTuber or a podcaster plug their Patreon account. It's a site that allows you to engage with your fans and earn money from donors and from subscribers, and you can even sell your work and apparently even merchandise your work using Patreon tools. Most Patreon account holders offer some of their content for free and some of their content to only paid subscribers. There are other options available. There are WordPress.org options. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. There are a variety of options. And then there are other options that are usable on any website building platform. So if you're not using WordPress.org content building, you can still use some of these plugins on your website. Now, you think that locking your precious art away behind walls would prevent any scraping of your work, but this is unfortunately not true. I had a question last week and I had to do some digging into this, and I found a plethora of websites that will walk you through scraping data from behind paywalls, from behind login screens, even from Patreon accounts themselves. And this is due to the underlying infrastructure of the internet. Paywalls and login screens in general are largely a function of the user interface of the internet. That's how we as regular users experience the internet. But sites that live behind paywalls and login screens are still hosted on servers and are therefore accessible to bots that are programmed to bypass that user interface. I have to assume that big companies can and do this because, for example, we know they scraped the entirety of the New York Times' archive, and that definitely lives behind a paywall. So this is not a slam dunk for protection, but it does offer a good roadblock. Yes? Probably yes. It's a very thorny issue. I don't know exactly how they do it. Again, I'm not a hacker, I'm not a website developer, I'm not a data scraper. But the consensus seems to be that probably yes, that they can gain access to anything that is hosted on a server anywhere. Yes.
So the school has a firewall, does that mean these days?
I don't know the answer to that. Have to ask IT about that.
Okay.
Unknown at this point. All right, another option we have is from Spawning AI, the same company that brought us the Do Not Train registry, that Have I Been Trained website. And that is an active AI scraping bot blocker called Koodaroo. It is in beta right now, but you can sign up to be part of the beta at this website. It is a free worldpress.org plugin that actively blocks AI scrapers from your website. There are a lot of companies that do this, or other big companies, but this one is specifically for the little guy's website. And unlike robots.txt, it is not dependent on ethical behavior. It is not a request. And it does not block indexing crawlers, so it does not affect your findability on the internet. We're going to play this really short video because I think it's cute.
At this very moment, AI bots are crawling across the web, bypassing opt-out requests and scraping data indiscriminately. Your original works are being downloaded to train AI models without your knowledge or consent. Until now. Koodaroo from Spawning.ai is an active defense system that identifies and blocks machine scraping from popular AI datasets. When an AI scraper is detected in the network, Koodaroo alerts all other members, automatically shielding those sites by rejecting or misdirecting that scraper. Koodaroo, the active monitoring and blocking system that denies those who would cross your boundaries.
Okay. So AI scraping bots can appear and disappear very quickly in a landscape. So identifying them quickly is very key, and this works by monitoring the behavior of bots on the sites that are known to be in those huge data sets. If there is a bot that is visiting every single one of those sites and scraping content off of those sites, they can be pretty sure that that is an AI scraping bot, and then it blocks it from the rest of their protected images or sites. There's also another option. You can take it a step further and have Koodaroo return an alternate image to the data scraping bot as opposed to blocking it. They have, you can choose an image of your liking, but they do have some suggestions. Where the money did that go? They have some suggestions. All right, well, that's not working. That's okay. Screwed up that animation. All right, another strategy for your website is called tar pitting. This is a strategy that was originally developed to combat spam emails in the late 90s. These are programs that are specifically designed to track crawlers in endless loops of link following to fake websites that are linked in your domain, but they just lead directly back into the tar pit. This is malware. It is malicious software that is designed to cause harmful activity, but be assured this is harmful activity to bots, not people. The biggest one of these so far is Nepenthes, which is a carnivorous plant genus. The developer of Nepenthes, who has chosen to remain anonymous because it is malware, has said that he created it because he's fed up and he wants to fight back. Become indigestible, he says. The other big one is iocane, which is the fictional poison from the movie The Princess Bride. They're so clever, right? And he has said, the developer of that has said, let's make AI poisoning the norm. iocane has an additional option to send back nonsense babble to poison data sets, as well as tar pit the crawlers. Other ones include Quixotic and Poison the Whelm for large language models. Again, these guys are such cards. All right, and that brings us to, yes.
And is there a fee associated with?
No, these are open source projects, as far as I know. They want to, artists want to fight back.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us to our high-tech solutions. These do take a little extra effort and a little tech savvy, but they do offer the most robust protection, although Koodaroo and tar pitting seem pretty effective to me, but if you don't have your own website, those aren't really options for you. Nightshade and Glaze can be applied to images that you post anywhere. They are free programs developed by the Computer Science Department at the University of Chicago, along with the help of our many artists, many of the artists we talked about last time, including Carlos Ortiz of the Disability Lawsuit and Jeanette Zhang, the founder of the CARA website. Here's a quote from Glaze's value statement, stating that they want to restore balance and allow artists to retain agency over their work. Glaze is a protective overlay, and this is the protection that is included in the portfolio site CARA. They include glazing on the images that you post in CARA. And it prevents style mimicry. To be clear, glazed images can still be scraped for training purposes, but the glazing makes them less useful and it prevents them from mimicking your specific style. As you might remember from last time, mimicking the style of a particular artist causes real harm to those artists. If you want to, if you're wanting to mimic the style of Vincent van Gogh, that's one thing. But when you're mimicking living artists, that affects their livelihood, right? And as we saw last time, Stability AI purposefully pre-trained their system to mimic the style of 16,000 artists so that it could be done quickly and easily. This is again from the Glaze website, calling it akin to identity theft. Style mimicry is akin to identity theft. And they've also warned us that this is the demoralization of artists, especially young students. There is now also the ability to fine-tune open source AI models. Open source means that that code is available to everyone. And so that means that a mimic can download a model, fine-tune that model to mimic a particular artist's style, and then that model does nothing but crank out style-specific mimicry images at scale. So Glaze is a great option for preventing this kind of attack. And it works by applying tiny changes to individual pixels. These are changes that we can't see or can barely see, but that confuse AI systems into thinking that they are seeing something different. So here we have several comparisons of unglazed and glazed artwork. And you can sort of see on this one, it doesn't show up as well as it did on my computer monitor, but pieces with flat color or very smooth backgrounds, you can see the effect of the glaze cloaking a little bit more in certain areas. Again, if you're worried about how your work looks with a glaze cloak applied to it, I would add a disclaimer and say, I use this great tool Glaze to protect my work against unscrupulous data scrapers, because that helps educate people again on these ethical issues. So when models try to use glazed images to mimic the style, they get something totally different. They get these weird, inaccurate hybrids and sometimes have trouble coming up with any pictures at all. Here we can see the originals, some mimic attempts when glaze is not used, and then what happens when we do use glaze. Okay, so once you download this program, and it is a pretty big program that does need a pretty decent graphics card, so fair warning on that. You just drop your image in, you select your settings, and run the program. Now, higher settings do offer more protection against style mimicry, but they also take longer and they are more visible. The effects of the cloaking is more visible on your finished product. For those of us maybe without desktop computing capabilities or without a computer that meets the specifications of Glaze, the researchers have introduced web glaze, which allows you to glaze images on their servers without having to download the program. But these programs are grant funded, and they really want to make sure that their work and their services are going to benefit real human artists. So they have made the use of web glaze invite only. The instructions for getting an invite are here. There are some hoops to jump through because they want to make sure that you are a real human artist who does real human art. But I'm happy to jump through those hoops with you if you're interested in getting an invitation to web glaze. Nightshade takes things a little bit further on the idea that the best defense is really a good offense. The distortions applied to nightshaded images have the ability to confuse AI images, not just with regards to style, but with representative content of any kind. Nightshade turns all images into something unsuitable for training AI to make depictions of anything. Again, this is from the program's website. They want to deter unscrupulous data scrapers since we know they do not respect our rights. Not necessarily by breaking the models, but by making it more costly for these companies to keep their data sets clean and effective. They want to make it more costly not to license works properly. Like a glazed image, a nightshaded image is largely unchanged from the original. Again, you have those flat colors that may appear to show the effect more strongly. But for the AI model, they will see something very different. For example, humans might see a cow standing in a field, but the nightshaded image appears to the AI like a purse. Trained on a sufficient number of nightshaded images, the AI model will become convinced that a cow has a handle and straps and pockets and zippers and maybe a nice brand, logo on it. And obviously this is for illustrative purposes only. I really just slapped this together, so apologies for the poor graphics on that. Again, I'm not a visual artist. All right, so you might think that having one image or even 1,000 images poison a data set. You might not think that would have any effect on a model that's been trained, after all, on 6 billion images. And you'd sort of be right, but the way this system works is really cool. They use what they call anchor images, which are usually taken from the image generator itself. And that somehow makes this maximally effective for poisoning data sets. So as you can see, even 500 poison samples starts to have a real noticeable effect on the model. Dogs start to look like cats, stop signs feature birds, so on. There is a lot. This is a very complicated program. I don't really understand it. It has a lot of math, a lot of Greek in it. But this website here, this article was super helpful in describing and explaining how effective nightshaded images can be. And even related concepts can become poisoned. And this kind of harks back to what we talked about last time about that latent space as these models operate in. Nightshade is poisoning whole areas of that latent space. And the more concepts get poisoned, the more trouble a model has in generating any images at all. So how effective is this? We don't really know for sure because GenAI companies are perhaps understandably loath to confirm or deny whether or not data poisoning has become a problem for them. But I think a recent quote from OpenAI's spokesperson to MIT's technology review, calling nightshade abuse, is pretty telling. I don't think it's abuse. I think it's like if you put your lunch in the department fridge and you label it, do not eat. Somebody eats it anyway, they don't like it, it's too spicy, or they have an allergic reaction, that's not your fault. You labeled it, do not eat, and they ate it anyway. It's not abusive. Nightshade is also a very large program, and there's currently no web version of this available. Right now, the researchers are working on a combined version of this technology, of these programs. But right now, you can run an image through both Glaze and Nightshade, but you have to do them as 2 separate processes. Same as in Glaze, you select an image, set your settings, and then you select your poison tag. And this is really important because to work most effectively, Nightshade needs to know what your image is actually of, because it wants to poison all images of the same thing in the same way. So all images of a cow need to be poisoned to look like a purse. And that is what it will eventually make an AI model think that a purse is a cow. And this was also a very helpful video by the artist Roxanne Lappa on how to use Nightshade, and also some really helpful tips on using it most effectively. Okay, lastly, we have Mist, which is a little bit like Glaze. It prevents against style mimicry by applying invisible watermarks to make them inimitable, which is a nice word, I like that one. It is more complicated. They recommend that you have coding or development experience. I didn't look into this very deeply because I do not have a lot of website development or coding experience, but I've included the link both to the download and the user guides that they have provided. Okay, so those are some of the strategies that are available to us. But like contraception, nothing is 100% effective aside from abstinence. And of course, in that case, this would be not posting your work at all on the internet. And I think that would be really sad both for you as individual artists and for art kind of as a whole. Art is meant to be viewed, art is meant to be shared. Also, nothing is going to be effective forever. We are in that arms race. And even the developers of Glaze and Nightshade have said that they view their programs as a stopgap measure to get us by until reasonable, meaningful regulation is enacted. So, while we hold our breath waiting for that to happen, the best long-term solution is to advocate for change. There are some bright spots in the GenAI landscape. Most of the major companies have said that it is impossible to train a good AI without downloading tons of copyrighted material. But there are a few companies who are proving them very, very wrong. Spawning AI, who brought us Have I Been Trained, Kudru, and the Do Not Train Registry are working on a dataset called Source Plus that is specifically an opt-in dataset. Fairly Trained, which brought us the AI training statement that we looked at last time. They provide certification for ethically curated and developed data sets. This is especially important for businesses because they don't want to take on the legal uncertainties that surround a lot of the current data set development. Plios is a French startup that is the largest data set made of entirely public domain things. These companies believe in quality over quantity. By actually curating a data set rather than just indiscriminately downloading the entire broth of the internet, that they can make a quality product and feel good about how they do. Other good actors include ProRata. This is a startup that is founded by the guy who basically invented the pay-per-click model that funds most of the modern internet. He has characterized the current AI development as shoplifting, and he's developed an attribution tech that aims for fair contribution with this algorithm that can somehow tell when a work in a data set is referenced, and it would then pay royalties to the creators of that content. The Dataset Providers Alliance is a union that promotes rights advocacy and proper curation of data sets. And the DARE, the Distributed AI Research Institute, this is a group that was founded by AI researcher named Timnit Gebru. She is also the co-author of an extremely important paper on large language models called The Dangers of Stochastic Parrots. This paper drew attention to many of the ethical issues involved in AI development. So of course it got her fired from Google in 2020. It is a fantastic paper, and I've provided the link here. But her new endeavor, DARE, is dedicated to AI research free from what she calls big tech's pernicious influence. Let's talk software for a minute. Now, Adobe, who makes Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and billions of other products, they have been marketing themselves recently as commercially safe because their AI generator, Firefly, is not built on these big data sets. It's built on their own extensive stock library. And I will give them points for trying, but because Adobe users can upload their own works to their extensive stock library, that stock library contains a lot of copyrighted information that authors and creators did not opt into anything else. And it also contains a lot of material that was straight up infringement in the first place. Last year, Adobe got publicly called out by the Ansel Adams estate for selling licenses to AI-generated Ansel Adams style photography. Ansel Adams' work is still very much in copyright, so this is not okay. Adobe did remove the pictures once they got publicly called out, but the Ansel Adams Trust released a statement saying, hey, if you really want to be taken seriously, read your purported commitment to ethical, responsible AI. Stop putting the onus on individual artists in policing their intellectual property. So fair warning, Adobe still has work to do. There are other options. Procreate is a popular Apple-based program, and last year, their CEO released this video.
Are we rolling? You've been asking us about AI. I usually don't like getting in front of the camera. I prefer that our products speak for themselves. I really fucking hate generative AI. I don't like what's happening in the industry, and I don't like what it's doing to artists. We're not going to be introducing any generative AI into our products. Our products are always designed and developed with the idea that a human will be creating something. You know, we don't exactly know where this story is going to go or how it ends, but we believe that we're on the right path supporting human creativity.
So, Procreate has made the commitment to respect not only your hard-earned skills, but your work and your privacy and your rights as well. There are some other options too, whose CEOs are perhaps a little publicly less salty. Those options include Clip Studio Paint, Krita, and Ibis Paint. Notably, they have what they call an AI disturbance, which kind of works, I think, akin to Glaze, that they automatically, or that you can choose to apply to works that you create in their platform. Now, I can't really speak to the relative strengths and weaknesses of these products. I'm not a visual artist. Like I said, I took one Photoshop class a million years ago. But these are options to explore. Again, the best long-term solution is to advocate for change. And these are some of the people I wanted to share, some of the people that I follow to stay up to date in that advocacy. These are some of the artists that I follow, including Roxanne Lappa, and I've linked one of her websites down here. She has a great compendium of anti-AI resources that was very helpful in helping me put this presentation together. So I highly recommend that. I follow a lot of techies too, and journalists. I cannot recommend highly enough the works of Ed Zitron and Brian Merchant. They are very powerful writers who are really digging into the power structures that underpin Silicon Valley and big tech cultures. And we also have some organizations that I follow, including the Facebook group Artists Against Generative AI. It's about 180,000 people. It's kind of the only reason that I'm still on Facebook, aside from like my mom. Gotta keep up with mom. All right, other actions that we can take. We can sign that AI training statement. That's pretty easy. We can join organizations. There are organizations for every type of artist, every kind of medium that you can think of, and they can help us wield collective action effectively. As we saw last time, sometimes collective action can be useful in forcing change, even against monolithic companies. We do not stand together, big tech will walk all over us. We can support each other. I think established artists have a duty to support those who will come after them. So supporting human art and artists is really important. And a lot of artists and creators have begun tagging their work as created by human intelligence or no AI, so that you can identify artists and works that you want to support. We do not want to reward these companies with the value of our time and attention. We want to do real things with real people. So I want to exhort that you go to the theater, go listen to people make music, buy independent presses, go look at the stars. Did you guys know that every single planet in the solar system is visible in the night sky this week? Pretty cool. I could see 5 of them last night. I don't have a telescope, so I couldn't see, what is it, Neptune and Uranus? Yeah. Anyway, do not reward these companies with your time and attention. And most importantly, challenge digital hegemony and technological determinism. Now, this is the portion of the presentation where I'm going to get a little editorial, perhaps even a trifle too radical for some taste, but I'm going to take my chances because now is the time to be bold and now is the time to be blunt. We are constantly told that generative AI is here to stay. And that may very well be true, although I would like to point out that is not a universally held opinion. It's not universally held among AI researchers. It's not universally held among economists. In fact, the only group that it does seem to be universally held by is the marketing departments of big tech. I'd also like to point out that a lot of things are here to stay, but that doesn't mean we accept them as they are. We regulate potentially harmful products and technologies, and we do this because technology is never neutral. It always exists within contexts of economics, social structures, and it is developed and deployed by real people in real companies. So let's take a look at those companies very briefly. Over the past 20 or 25 years, we have really seen what these disruptive philosophies that rule Silicon Valley do. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook and Meta, has said, move fast and break things. Well, they sure have broken a lot of things. Entire industries swallowed into the gig economy and replaced with precarious labor. The amplification of misinformation, conspiracy theories, political violence. Do you remember Facebook's emotional contagion experiments? These companies do not care. They have shown a reckless disregard for the health of individuals and entire society. I think AI promises to exacerbate these vulnerabilities. This culture cares nothing for creativity, for education, for democracy, for history, for anything except money and Mars, right? They're always interested in Mars. Surrendering more power to them, I think we can expect more of the same. We can expect greater inequality, more precarity, more division, more dependency, more exploitation, and more misinformation. And this seems like a good time to talk about shitification. The more polite term is platform decay. This is a term coined by Cory Doctorow, the sci-fi author. It was named Word of the Year last year by Macquarie Dictionary, and it was Word of the Year in 2023 by the American Dialect Society. It's pretty simple. It's it explained the decay of the online environment to the profit motive. So first, they draw users in by offering extremely useful services. But then they abuse those users in service of their business customers. And finally, they just abuse everybody to get more money back for their shareholders. This is why Uber and Airbnb are now just as expensive, or even more so, than their traditional counterparts. This is why you've probably noticed that Google now, frankly, just sucks. This is not a mistake. This was the direct and intended result of a series of decisions made to serve shareholders at the expense of users. They intentionally made search results worse. And this is well documented in leaked memos and emails. And they did it to increase the amount of time that you spend on that site in order to expose you to more marketing and more advertising. The head of search at the time expressed deep dismay that the company would think to do this. So of course they removed him as head of search, did it anyway. This is why your Facebook feed, no longer actually shows you posts from any of your friends. It's also evident in Meta's decision to flood AI and Instagram with AI accounts that are designed specifically to make inflammatory remarks, both left and right leaning, by the way, to increase engagement on their site. Never mind that engagement is largely negative and sometimes causes real harm to people, even death, because everything they do in growth is justified, because their ends justify their means. We must always remember that these tech companies are not our friends and that we are the product, and they will do whatever it takes to pursue endless growth quarter after quarter. When we adopt new tech into a society, there's always a trade-off. One of my passions is medieval history, and I can tell you that in the medieval period, even ordinary peasants had much longer memories and could do complex mathematical calculations in their heads and on their fingers. Now, the trade-off between universal literacy and being able to remember small details of contracts or perform long division in your head, that's an easy trade-off, right? The benefits far outweigh the drawbacks. But as technology advances, that math becomes trickier. Calculators mean we can't really do mental math at all. I can barely calculate a 10. Spell check means we can't spell. And now we're seeing a ton of research showing that the advent of GPS has led to a total collapse in our spatial and wayfinding skills. I'm not saying that these things aren't useful. I'm saying that there is a trade-off. And when we start suggesting outsourcing creativity and writing skills, what will that trade-off be? Anecdotally, there's this. I got some Stanford grad that something seemed off. Kept pausing mid-sentence. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "Sometimes I forget words now. I'm so used to having ChatGPT complete my thoughts that when it's not there, my brain seems slower." He was using it for everything. It had become his external brain, and now his internal one is getting weaker. I couldn't find any scholarly articles on the effects on artists, on artistic skills by using generative AI, but I did find a lot on using text generating AI, and none of it was pleasant. This one came out a few weeks ago, and this came from Carnegie Mellon University and Microsoft's own research arm. And it concluded that technologies can and do result in the deterioration of cognitive facts. That higher confidence in generative AI is associated with less critical thinking. And that by mechanizing tasks, you deprive the user of routine opportunities to practice their judgment and strengthen cognitive musculature, leaving them atrophied and unprepared. I don't want cognitive atrophy. I don't want to lose my ability to generate novel ideas. I don't want to lose my ability to recognize a coherent argument, or perhaps more importantly, an incoherent argument. Because critical thinking has never been more critical to our society, perhaps, maybe that's a little hyperbolic, than it is now. And if generative AI is truly here to stay, then now is the time to make sure that it is developed and deployed ethically. And here's why. This is the Collingridge dilemma, named for David Collingridge from his 1980 book, The Social Control of Technology. And it attempts to explain the problem of anyone trying to mitigate the impact of technology on society, on economics, on individuals. The two lines here are knowledge and control. And what this is saying is that in the early stages of introducing a technology, when the ability to control or change it is high, knowledge is low. Not enough is known about the potential harms that it might do, or not enough known by enough people to do anything about it. By the time knowledge gets high, control is very, very hard. This is from the book Social Control of Technology. When change is easy, the need for it cannot be foreseen. When the need for change is apparent, change has become difficult, time-consuming, and sometimes downright impossible if we have allowed that technology to fuse far enough into our system. So there is this inflection point, right? Where enough is known and it is still possible to control or change, alter the trajectory of a technology. Think about nuclear energy. We reached this inflection point and we regulated the crap out of it, right? I think we missed the boat with social media, but I think perhaps we are approaching this inflection point with generative AI right now. We are all starting to realize that perhaps change is needed, and it is perhaps not too late to change this trajectory. But we're not going to get any help from our government on this, not in the next 4 years. Public pressure has power too, but that public pressure has to come from somewhere. And change and resistance often start in artistic communities and artistic cultures, because artists see things differently. And they often hold up a mirror to society. Which takes us back to actions. Yes?
Is there a lag time? Is there a along the timeline? Is there a requirement that knowledge has to be out ahead of control in order to see control reduce? Knowledge has to be increasing at a faster rate.
I would say probably yes, right? We want to make
Control
sure
is not just giving in.
yes, we want to make sure that it's a little bit ahead.
Has to beat down.
Yeah.
So it has to
I haven't read Social Control of Technology. Maybe it's on my to be read list. So brings us back to action. And the best way to resist is just not to use it. The dominant narrative tells us that AI is inevitable, that resistance is futile, that creativity is dead, that we all just have to adapt or die. But this is a self-serving and self-fulfilling narrative. They say this to convince you that your actions don't matter, that your objections don't matter. They say this to be an anesthetic to the conscience. Because when you feel helpless and hopeless, you won't object, even if you know things are wrong. It makes us vulnerable and compliant. And that is the last thing that we want to be right now. I know that these days, big tech's power feels inescapable. It is everywhere, it is part of our lives. But you know what? So did the divine right of kings, and we managed to shake that off eventually. Because any human power can be resisted. And personal choices always matter. They are all that matters, because they are, of course, all that we can control. I don't want tech pros running our lives or our futures or our governments or our societies. They sometimes talk about the problem of aligning AI with human values, to which I would respond, whose values? Because these values are not my values. Make no mistake, taking over our government and our futures is exactly what big tech is trying to do. See Elon Musk's AI first strategy, or their what did you do last week emails. They plan to feed the responses to those emails into a large language model and let the AI decide who to fire. This is what the New York Times, or I'm sorry, the New Yorker called techno-fascism by chatbot. I don't believe it is any coincidence that AI is ascendant at the same time as autocracy. I think we are all beginning to realize that we perhaps live in a time where we must decide how far we are going to live our values and how important it is not to surrender those values ahead of time. I don't think this is a radical position, and I know it isn't a rare one. You need only look around to see that there is a robust resistance to a technology that, frankly, only seems to excel at fraud, propaganda, surveillance, and death. That's a lot to be against. So, yes.
So I've seen some things on the internet, trying to give people ways to identify whether or not they're seeing something that's real or that's been generated.
Yes.
Is there any organization that, or I guess it's trying to give people a way to just reject what they see?
So that was actually part of this presentation that I cut out. There are a lot of tools that you can use to try and identify AI-generated images or AI-generated text. There's a lot of mixed reviews as to how effective these are. The solution, of course, to what you're saying is quite easy. The companies involved just need to watermark automatically AI-generated images, but they don't want to do that because unless all the AI companies do that, people are just unethical users of a generative AI are just going to move to another platform, right? So the answer is no. There's no collective agencies trying to advocate for that. But if you come visit me in the library, we can talk more about that. Because there are ways, for example, that you can get rid of the AI overviews in your Google searches. There are steps that you can take, but that was something I need to cover.
It needs to be built into the AI itself.
Yes, it does. It really
The
does.
AI needs to disclose itself.
Yeah. How hard?
The AI needs
Sure
to
not.
have that as
Yeah.
part of this.
Initial regulation, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with that, not with this scary slide, because that's a really scary slide. But I'm going to leave you with the idea that it is okay to be against generative AI, and that really you are in good company. We don't have to let these companies become even more powerful, even more harmful, and even more entrenched in our society. I know that it's always intimidating to challenge the dominant narrative, right? And the tech industry has become so dominant as to feel unsurmountable. But please do not give in to that pit of determinism and nihilism and despair. Our actions matter. It was the late Howard Zinn who told his students, you can't be neutral on a moving train. If events are already moving in a direction, to be neutral means to accept it. I'm not saying you have to do everything, but we can all do something to resist this moving train. And I'm going to finish with another Howard Zinn quote, because he's pretty great. The power of a bold idea, uttered publicly, in defiance of dominant opinion, cannot be easily measured. Those who speak out in such a way as to shake up not only the self-assurance of their enemies, but the complacency of their friends, are precious catalysts for change. So I would like you to think about trying to be that change, but I will now step off of my soapbox, rant over. Thank you very much for spending another hour with me this week. I really appreciate your time and attention. This is the QR code where all of the links in this presentation are linked behind that. I know that I can come off, let's say, overly passionate. But I hope I didn't alien anyone with my views. They are only my views after all. So thank you very much for coming and listening to me.